I believe that this is the Action Cast. So let's do this properly. There it is. This is the Action Cast, the only podcast with a bunch of dudes wearing gold masks. And now, our feature presentation. So hey, I'm Joe Drilling. This is the Action Cast, and joining me this month is one Mr. Bryce Wilson.
Hello.
And one Mr. Ethan Chang.
They can see me, right?
They can see you, yeah. They
Yes,
can see
they
you.
can see you.
They can definitely see you. So
We all saw that.
we all saw that. So, hey, quarantine still happening. So Bryce did the really kind thing and suggested a 7-hour movie for us to watch this month. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have the time. If ever there was a chance for you to not have an excuse to not watch Excalibur, it is not now.
that's true. That's
You can
true.
follow those triple negatives.
Yeah,
Find a Zen cone of wisdom.
that's right.
You
So-
will find a grail of wisdom, if you will.
A grail, that's
That
right.
will float and taunt you, and then transform into an old man wearing armor.
Yes. Yes. So, before we get to Excalibur, though, I think John Borman's Excalibur, I think we should start with maybe a little bit of action movie news. Maybe let's do that.
I don't have any news, but I will say, before we do anything else, I will plead to our listeners, why is our time
This
cop
is
episode
Media Break.
so
You give us
successful?
3 minutes,
Please
and we'll
explain
give you
this to
the
me.
world.
Our time cop episode has 7 times the traffic of anything else we've ever done, and it's not very good. Like, it's fine, but it's not one of the best episodes we ever did.
I don't even
And,
know where
like-
these episodes are being shared. Where does it have the views?
It has the views on
not-
YouTube.com.
It's on the YouTube channel. That's the only place it resides currently, and yeah, it's got like 500 views, which is
We're up to like 700 now, which is like insane.
yeah,
'cause
and that's way more than like any of our regular weekly streams of video game stuff or anything. It's just like
And it also has our number one amount of downvotes, which just makes it hilarious because the people who are finding it and seeking it out aren't enjoying it, but then they're apparently spreading
well,
it.
it has
So
the most
it's
downvotes, but
justified.
isn't it like 9 or 10 downvotes? It's not like
Something like that.
you know,
Yeah.
I
it's
think that they're finding it because right now is the time has come for cops. And so it's
maybe,
like
There we
Google
go.
type synergy.
maybe.
Fair enough.
If there were more honest cops like Jean-Claude Van Damme in that movie, we might have fewer problems. But you know, as it turns
but
out,
no, have mercy on us, Time Cop listeners. If you have come to us from the Time Cop episode, explain to us in the past. Be a Time Cop from the future. Explain to us in the past how you came across the Time Cop.
how that
episode.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then this conversation wouldn't happen. Like, this is not happening right now if they do that.
That's
Fair enough.
true. So I feel like there's at least a little bit of action movie news that exists since the last time we did this, right? I'm gonna double check my phone, I guess, and see if I like texted the people that I text about this kind of thing, you know, and then sort of like check that. That's my go-to for a month's worth of Action Cast movie news. So, yeah, I guess like the couple of things are that. Oh well, I guess we have to. I don't really want to talk about this, but I think we have to. The Snyder Cut is getting released on the HBO Max streaming service.
I'm good. I'm down with that. I'll watch it. I will, in fact, buy that for $1.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that feels like I guess I have to watch it to like have watched it and to say that like I witnessed it and it was still bad because I'm sure it is still going to be bad.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So when Justice League was made, there was a really horrible tragedy that befell the Snyder family that I don't really want to get into, but like it was bad and it took Zack Snyder off the film, and Joss Whedon pinch hit to finish the film. And when that happened and the movie came out and it wasn't good, a bunch of the like DC fanboys who really loved Batman v Superman, which is a garbage fire of a movie, by the way, insist that Justice League would have been good if Zack Snyder's original cut were to be released. And so there was this whole like hashtag release the Snyder cut thing that was going on.
I've seen that meme. I don't think I ever knew what it meant.
Right. And so now HBO Max, the new streaming service from Warner Media, is doing it. And next summer, it's going to come out on HBO Max. Which, one, tells me that there, in fact, was not really a Snyder cut per se, because it wouldn't take a year to finish it if there was, right?
Well, no, my understanding is that there was a work print version, but it was all unfinished effects and whatnot that, right, were then jettisoned. So,
but even that work print version was supposedly like 5 hours long, and I can't imagine that's what they're going to put out, is a 5-hour version of this movie.
I feel like at the very least it'll be interesting. I cannot get very mad about this project, like, from any side that you pitch it. Like, I mean,
I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I think it's great that people want a thing and now they're going to be able to see it. But like, the thing that I don't love about it is that when a very vocal section of the audience that maybe should not be encouraged is now encouraged because one studio did the thing they wanted, I feel like that's maybe not a great precedent to set. But as someone did point out on Twitter, if they're doing this, then can we please get John Woo's original cut of Hard Target, please?
I would also buy that for $1.
Yeah, that's what I really want, is the John Woo Hard Target cut. The other piece of news that I have is that Bill and Ted Face the Music is coming along pretty well, according to Alex Winter's Twitter account, and that trailers are going to be coming out like fairly soon. It was supposed to release this summer, but now it looks like it's got bumped to fall maybe because of the pandemic. So
did you see that they did the commencement speech?
I did. Yes, I did.
That was in Willy Wonka's term a small good deed shining in a dark world.
Yeah,
so,
that was absolutely one of those things that I needed in that moment. It was like, here's a nice, fun, cool thing, and I was like, it's like a salve. It's like a balm in Gilead at this moment. Like, that's what I needed.
So Joe, what you're telling me is that you needed to heal, and then the land will heal along with you.
Yes.
Is how that goes.
Nice.
So.
What I'm telling you is that I need everyone to be excellent to each other. That's what I'm telling you, and everybody else. That's what I'm telling you. The other piece of movie news I have, which okay, so I don't know if I'm the only one who saw it. The Invisible Man was the last movie I saw in a movie theater 10 years ago before I wasn't allowed to go to movie theaters anymore. Or before, I should frame that differently. Before it was no longer a good idea to go to a movie theater, because I don't want to sound like I'm...
movie I saw in the theater.
Yeah. So...
Fun fact, the last movie I saw in a theater before this all went down was Abel Ferrara's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which seems kind of appropriate in hindsight.
That's the 80s one, right?
That's early 90s. But
early 90s, yeah.
It's a good one to go out on for the death of cinema, so,
Yeah, right, sure. But now the news, in terms of... So I felt like The Invisible Man was like the perfect reboot to a Universal monster movie. Like, they've been missing the mark so badly since the original run of Universal. Like, after the original 40s, or I guess 50s is when they kind of closed out the original Universal monster cycle. They have blown, I feel, every... I mean, I guess you could argue that the Brendan Fraser Mummy, because it's so different from what that movie and definitely the sequels that it spawned are, that was kind of successful. But, like, every time they've tried to do they've done, like, 2 Dracula attempts, I feel like, at this point. They did, I think, 2 Frankenstein attempts already. They did, like, it just, even the ones that weren't that bad compared to some of the more, compared to like the Tom Cruise Mummy, like Jack Nicholson and Wolf, the Coppola Dracula,
The Coppola Dracula is at least one of the most stupid, gorgeous films ever made.
right, even the Branagh Frankenstein, which I don't love, but like it's better than whatever, you know.
I do not go to bat for the Branagh Frankenstein. I will go slightly to bat for the Joe Johnston Wolfman, which, aside from the worst CGI effect that I've ever seen, which is a CGI bear with hurt feelings,
Yeah,
is actually pretty fun.
It's
Either of you defend Van Helsing?
no, absolutely not.
It really just depends on what you mean by defend in that case. Like, is it a good film? No. Is it something that you occasionally, like, you know? If it comes on, if I'm flipping through cable and I see it, like, I'll stop and watch it just for the sheer car wreck spectacle of it. But I do not.
If you, for instance, couldn't leave your house or really do anything for it, really.
Once again, like, watchable is such a pliable term. Like, is it a good film to spend your time on to watch? No. Is it something that occasionally is just bug nuts entertaining? Yes. Because it's
yeah, I mean, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, hey, Nick Rykar is in the chat. You're a friend of mine, and he wants to know who would the modern day Abbott Costello pair with the Universal monsters when we get to that point in the new cycle. I'm going to say, based on the only thing that I really enjoy in the Fast and the Furious movies, I'm going to say that Ludacris and Tyrese Gibson should be that comedy duo that gets thrown in with the Universal monsters. No feelings on that? No way in on that? Okay, all right.
No feelings whatsoever.
Oh, actually, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are actually probably the real, like... But I would take Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris, for sure, because they're the best part of Furious 7, in my opinion.
Just for the benefit of the people watching on the stream right now, I want them to know I'm not sponsored by Fujifilm. Having a little bit of a battery...
It would appear that you are.
Yes. You're having a battery drain, and so you don't want to lose that? You lose all your connection? Okay. I can't decide if that's better or worse than Anthony's like little blue silhouette.
No, I'll be back.
Okay.
I just need to pop a new battery in my camera.
Oh, in your camera. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm using a not a webcam.
Right. Oh, okay. That's why you look so good. That's why. Bryce and I look like ass, and you look crystal clear, and that's why. So anyways, getting to this whole Universal thing, the next one does look pretty good, and it's funny you mentioned the Wolfman, Bryce. Even though I think that movie is, I mean, it wasn't awful, but like it wasn't good. And the fact that they disrespected Rick Baker by having him come in to do the effects and then just painting over them with CG was
they disrespected everyone in that film. I mean, no one got away clean. But once again, I'm not gonna like go to the bat for it as like some kind of hidden gem, but it's got a budget and really game performances from Del Toro and Hopkins, and some very, very odd moments, and you don't just see those like big budget horror films aimed at adults like that often. So I'm not gonna tell everyone to go seek out this hidden classic, but if it comes by on a streaming service, it's probably better to watch than just like, you know, cycling through titles for the next 90 minutes wondering what you're going to watch.
Sure. Yeah. But the point that I'm getting to is that apparently Ryan Gosling is going to be the new Wolfman. And if whoever directs this, because apparently they don't have a director yet, whoever directs this does what Lee Whannell did with The Invisible Man, I am here for it, because The Invisible Man was so good, and so chilling, and so discomforting, and so everything a horror movie should be. And I will caveat that with a big old content warning for anybody who has been close to someone who is in like an abusive relationship where like that could be a problem for you. Do not see Lee Whannell's Invisible Man. But if you think you can handle that, see Lee Whannell's Invisible Man, because holy shit, like, man, I was, the trailer came out, you know, probably 6 months ago or whatever, and I was like, I am cautiously optimistic on this, and I was hoping it would be as good as it looked, and then I started hearing that it was good, and then I went and saw it, and it was still even better than I expected. Like, it was so good. And if whatever they do with Ryan Gosling and the Wolfman is on a level with that, I'm here for it 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm taking the default position that every movie that gets announced is not actually going to happen. Like until, like if I see a new, like I'm expecting to see one more film this year. That film will be *Da 5 Bloods*. That's the one film that I know I'm going to actually be able to watch as a consumer. And like beyond that, if I get to see a movie that was made post 2019 again in my life, it will be a pleasant surprise. So, you know.
I'm sure that's a good. I mean, that's probably a reasonable tack to take at this point.
Yeah.
But there's
theatrical earnings probably still account for a good fifth or quarter of what a movie will earn in its lifetime, right?
I would consider probably more. I mean, honestly, like especially when you bring the worldwide box office into it.
Yes, if it gets released in China, especially, right? So. Yeah. I really can't. I am not saying that movie theaters should open any sooner than is safe, but I am saying I cannot wait to go see a movie in a movie theater again. That is the thing that I have missed the most during this quarantine.
I mean, yeah, no, I'm rooting for Tenet, but like I said, it will be a pleasant surprise, not something that I'm counting on. So.
Yeah. And the last piece of movie news that I have is about Halloween Kills, which is, I liked Halloween 2017, 2018.
I believe the technical term for it is Halloween.
Yes. I liked Halloween. And, but this whole naming scheme doesn't work for me. Calling a sequel, like, and this is not the first time this has happened. We need to please stop calling sequels and prequels to things the same thing as the original thing. And when I say that, I am in fact even talking about The Thing, which was a prequel to The Thing. And like, why? That's just confusing. Or like the 2009 Bionic Commando game was actually a sequel to Bionic Commando. Like, stop doing that. And Halloween, Halloween, was a sequel to Halloween.
Or
like, stop.
Or as my wife refers to it, H2 recent. So,
H4O is really what it should be, I guess.
yeah.
We discussed on the first version of this show that the Cobra reboot needed to be called Marion Cobra.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That was your stance. Was that after John Rambo? But John Rambo didn't end up being. It was Rocky Balboa, and then the working title of Rambo 4 was John Rambo, and so you were like, it's got to be Marion Cobretti. And I stand with you on that. If we get one of those, it's got to be Marion Cobretti.
The new Bionic Commando should have been called Bionic Commando Spencer.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So
what's the Halloween Kills news?
Donald Pleasance is reprising his role as Dr. Loomis from Beyond the Grave somehow, and I really hope, but I do not believe, because there are no details about like how they're doing this. I hope it's like Superman Returns style, where it's like there's leftover footage of Marlon Brando that they used in Superman Returns, and like there's just leftover footage somewhere of Donald Pleasance, and that they don't do, like, there was part of me that really loved seeing Peter Cushing on screen again in Rogue One.
No.
But like I hated it was like a digital puppet, and it freaked me out, man. Like it weirded me out.
I can say literally every time I find that effect so off-putting that like I don't think it's ever been employed well. Like the Peter Cushing one was the first one. I mean, obviously the Carrie Fisher stuff in Return of Skywalker was terrible. And then I watched Terminator Dark Fate, which didn't hate. I put it pretty much like right on the
Yeah.
level of Terminator 3.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I put it above Terminator
but
3. Fuck that. It's a.
but that's a matter of degrees there. But all I'm gonna say is like it opens with the CGI lich of Edward Furlong, and I found that whole sequence so off-putting and ugly, both morally and visually, that it took me like a good half hour to get over and start giving the movie.
So I think in that one though,
Did I miss that he died? He's not dead.
No.
I was gonna say that's what I was gonna say. I don't feel like it's in poor taste when he consented to it. The Peter Cushing one freaks me out.
Confession time. Here's the funny part was that Edward Furlong is alive, but I thought when I started the movie that he was dead. Because here's the thing. I always thought that Edward Furlong was in Ghost World, and I knew the kid from Ghost World died. Edward Furlong is not in Ghost World. Brad Renfro is in Ghost World.
Right, and Brad
So I
Renfro is
confused Brad Renfro and
Edward Furlong.
Furlong. And so when that happened, like I was literally aghast. I was like, I can't believe they fucking did that. And then I googled Edward Furlong and saw what way his life has gone post Terminator 2, and I didn't feel much better about the situation.
It was really post American History X. I feel like that was where the nosedive happened. Was after American History X. Also, he was in the remake of Night of the Demons, which is was a bad idea to begin with. But by that point, he had gone from looking very young to suddenly looking 40, even before he was.
Yeah.
And so it's like all these teenagers and a 40-year-old looking Edward Furlong, who's actually like 25 or whatever, and it's not good. It's not good. But
no,
I'm
it wasn't quite as ghoulish as I assumed it was, but I still think it was pretty damn tacky. So
and that's why I hope that that's not what they do with Donald Pleasance, but I'm worried that it is exactly what they're going to do with Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, I'll say the funny part is that I because there's a clip of him in Hallow Green, and I originally thought that was what it was.
Is there?
Like, yeah, well, but that's the thing is like there's a clip of Loomis in Hallow Green, and I assumed that it was like something from Curse of Michael Myers that they didn't use, but then according to some friends of mine who are way bigger Halloween nerds, no, it wasn't actually Donald Pleasance. They just brought in a Donald Pleasance impersonator. So I feel like if they had extra footage of Pleasance, they would have used it there. So I think we're up for a CGI Donald Pleasance.
Boy. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And what is that, like, also, if Dr. Loomis, the actor who played Dr. Loomis died of old age, essentially.
Yeah.
So the idea that Dr. Loomis would still be alive 40 years after the first Halloween feels...
I mean, I'm assuming it'll be in a flashback or something. I don't know. I don't know. Like, my thing is, Hallow Green is not a perfect movie, but it has, become, almost a comfort food movie to me, and it kind of just did the Creed thing where it took everything that didn't work from the last 40 years of the franchise and just, set that aside. So if you're bringing back Loomis, I'm assuming you're bringing back all the weird mythology, and what made Hallow Green work was it threw away all the weird mythology, just there was no family connection. Michael Myers didn't give a fuck. No Cult of Thorn. So why are you gonna recomplicate this?
Well, I hope they're not. I hope it's just maybe it's just a very brief nod to get your ass away from there.
They leave in the coven of Irish toy-making witches, which is my favorite.
That should be good. What's the name of that actor? Dan O'Herlihy? Is that the name? And he's also great in RoboCop. Dick, I am very disappointed.
They should bring back Tom Atkins to hunt Michael Myers.
They fucking
finally bring it into the universe.
My dude is almost 90 years old and he still kicks ass.
You can still do it. Yeah.
Tom Atkins is living the dream in that movie because everybody wishes that they would find a super attractive person who's half their age, who just is ready to jump in the sack with them, fully consensually and at a moment's notice. No matter what peril is going on, that is Tom Atkins lived the dream there.
You're not going to turn down Tom Atkins in his prime.
I mean, that's true.
Too much power.
That's true. Actually, maybe she was the one who was living the dream
Living
because
the
she
dream,
got to hop in
right.
the sack with Tom Atkins.
Like with Tom Atkins.
He's a big boy. He's a prize. He's a big boy.
I would
Yes,
man.
he is a thick boy.
I would hit Tom Atkins now if he felt up to the task. So. Speaking of that, we should get into the movie because there is a lady in this movie that like the best part of this movie. I'm just gonna say it right off. The best part of this movie is goth Helen Mirren.
Oh yeah. Well, the best part of this movie is the whole movie. Here's the thing: is that this movie took me a while. Like, weirdly enough, I don't think it was like until like the third time I watched this movie that I really started to enjoy it. And I feel like from the email chain, I get the sense that I was the only person to enjoy that. So, action listeners, let me just put it this way. If you're going into this movie for the first time, if you're curious from this podcast, just know that the entire film has a very particular aesthetic, and I would describe that aesthetic as acid with your dad. It's like, that is just what this entire thing is like. It's like, if you and your father are just trying to bond, and you both took acid, and someone dropped you off at a Ren fair, like, that would be this movie.
I'm not. You're not.
I have a lot of reasons I think this movie is charming, but I want to hear kind of what you guys were thinking on it.
I thought the aesthetic was more like, I don't know if either of you have ever taken melatonin or maybe taken too much melatonin, but it would be like if you watched a normal movie about like the mythologies of King Arthur, and then you went to sleep and had melatonin dreams about it.
Okay, but that's my thing is I think you're kind of hit on the nail on the head on what is the appeal of this movie to me, is that you say a normal movie about King Arthur, but this is as close to a movie about King Arthur as ever been made. Like, all the normal movies about King Arthur, like, kind of completely boulderize everything. This is the only movie that really acknowledges that all, like, the Arthurian lore and the Arthurian legends are all weird as shit. They are, like, fucked up, insane foundational stories, like all foundational stories are. And most movies like try and like, spin away from it and like give new takes. And this one just like, baby, it just swerves in. This is definitely a movie that the man who made Exorcist 2 would make about Arthurian lore.
Yeah, no kidding. And Deliverance. Yeah. So here was so first of all, I'm going to say that I don't disagree with you, but I think it's more like, for me, it's acid with my grandpa, particularly my mom's dad, because he was really into like Shakespeare and classical literature and all. Like, my dad is not into that at all. Acid with my dad would be more like Mandy, which is the movie I watched last night, which might have numbed the effect of any of the trippy shit in this movie, because Mandy is a whole nother thing. Also,
I wouldn't have thought of that, but I bet you if you ask Cosmatos, this might have been one of the few films that you could say was a precursor to Mandy, because like a lot of the color palette
especially when when Morgana sort of like takes power, and there's this scene inside of like a chapel in the castle, and it's like got this blue and purple color palette and stuff. It looks
like the approach to the violence. Like there's like a scene where like there's like just like a blood like coated like battle axe, and like they cut to like someone just like not even swinging it, but like just trying to shove it through someone's chest.
Yes,
and you're just
but I think it does need to be said that the fights absolutely suck in this movie. They're terrible.
It's the type of dream where you're trying to run from something and it's like you're in...
And you can't. It's like you're in quicksand. Yeah, right, yeah.
That's true. No, the fights don't suck. This is the same debate we had during the Warriors, actually. The fights don't suck. They just vary wildly in quality. They're either really good or they're the last... I
guess.
Version that they do. So I mean, that was the thing that they cared about like the least.
Yeah. There's the modern movie making tack of like, let's make a book into 2 movies to sell more tickets or whatever. Or in the case of The Hobbit, 3 movies, which was a disaster. All those movies are garbage. I don't care what you say, Bryce. All 3 of those Hobbit movies suck out loud, and big part of it is that it's 3 movies instead of 2 or even 1, because the Ralph Bakshi version is 1 movie, and that is a way better version of The Hobbit than the version we got.
The only part of The Hobbit that I kind of go to bat for is the first one, and I only kind of go to bat for it.
Right. So
just for the record.
But I will say this movie felt like it should have been 2 movies. Like I just felt like they stuffed way too much in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, but to me that's like the whole charm of the film is how overstuffed it is, and like once again that it kind of respects the nature of the stories. Is like the Arthurian stories do not break down into like 3-act Hollywood plot structure, and I totally respect this movie for not even attempting it. Like it is not.
I mean,
it's not like a movie with neat arcs and things. It is just a bunch of things that happen, and it becomes like overwhelming, and like it's like that dramatic sense that really makes it kind of special to me. Like to me, if you made this movie any more normal than it is, it would lose all of its charm. And like you could not like what to me like watch like Robin Hood Prince. Like to me, if like you have a Robin Hood Prince of Thieves version of this movie, that movie would just completely suck. I would not enjoy it at all. Like it's just like,
well, wait, would it still have Alan Rickman?
Is.
Would this movie add Alan Rickman if it was that? Because
I mean, in all fairness, like this movie's got such a murderer's row of British characters.
it really does.
You could
It
just, like,
really
put them
does.
in there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I just felt like, I mean, so you're not wrong when you say all that stuff about the original Arthur stories. But so first of all, this is not actually based on the original Arthur stories. This is based on a different book about, as there's been many novelizations of those stories.
It's based on La Morte Arthur, and you can track that all the way back to the 13th century. So for basically this, La Morte Arthur is the first book, and I'm sure that someone on the internet can like bring up an earlier example, but for all intents and purposes, it was the first attempt to really codify and put all the Arthur stories in one cohesive narrative.
But
it's also from the 13th century, so their idea of cohesive narrative is way different from our idea of cohesive narrative.
So
like, that's what I like
I would agree with you on that. I mean, okay, so you're right. Their idea of cohesive narrative is way different than ours. But when you talk about the 3-act structure or the 5-act structure, like the ancient Greeks were writing character arcs in a way that we still write them in, like, before the 1st century, AD. So, like, I just, like, or CE, I guess is what we say now, right? So, like, the fact that Antigone exists, or Oedipus Rex exists, or, like, that kind of, to me, that's, like, this is just, the thing that, this lost me a little bit when it's like the beginning is like you get the whole Uther with young Gabriel Byrne, and then you go from there to Arthur as the squire immediately, and then he pulls the sword, and then like 5 minutes later he's being an asshole to Lancelot, to the point that I didn't even realize that was still actually Arthur, like that was being an asshole to Lancelot.
Okay, but you're skipping over my favorite scene in the movie though, which is him. Okay, but before we get into that, like, I guess this is just a movie that does not try and transpose modern understanding over a medieval world. I mean, like, to me, this is a movie, like, you could not go back in time and show Guy Ritchie's King Arthur to medieval peasants and have it be a recognizable version of the story. To me, you could take Excalibur and, like, once they stopped trying to burn you as a witch for your tech magic and showed this to a bunch of, like, filth-encrusted medieval peasants, they would understand this story. Like it is a film made with the medieval. Yeah, this is a film that is like made with a genuine medieval understanding, and that's what I think is like cool about it. And I like it because like it's, to me, it's like, I think at the time this was considered a revisionist take on the King Arthur mythos, because like it doesn't shy away from like the rape and the incest and the extreme violence that are in these original stories. But like now it's like almost like endearingly square. Like, I mean, for all the weird shit in this movie, and once again, this is acid with your dad weird, this like takes the Arthurian legend like so at face value, and so and like, as something that deserves to be told, that is just like, God love it. Like, obviously Berman took this film extremely seriously, and to me that's it, like really wanted to take the story at face value and tell the story at face value, and it as a result it is a odd fucking movie, but it also just makes it a very unique experience to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I was trying to figure out watching it was that it's a very strange movie, but is it a successful movie in terms of what it's set out to do? I wonder if it
I'm
was.
not even sure what it was setting out to do. So like,
I guess
think
what I mean is that what's the director's name? Berman.
Borman. Yeah.
Borman.
John Borman. Yeah,
Borman. Like, do you think that that's the movie he wanted to make when it was all done?
probably.
I think so. I don't see like I mean like that's why like watching this like this movie cost 11 million Reagan era dollars.
Yeah, you can see.
Dollars,
Wow.
and
you can see the money on screen and in this one for sure.
Yeah. And it was a hit. And like, can you imagine a film this eccentric getting that kind of funding today and like resonating with like that audience? Like this movie is weird as shit.
I mean, like Marvel let James Gunn make a movie with a talking raccoon that then like resonated with a big audience.
No, I'm sorry. To me, there's no comparison. A talking raccoon who shoots guns and has Bradley Whitford's voice is one thing. Like pagan magic in an Arthurian lore story is like another thing. Like this is like the kind of movie that I feel like Alan Moore would make if you gave him money. Like it's just I don't know. It's just really.
I feel like Alan Moore would make a significantly more interesting movie than this if you. I don't feel like it's all that off the page, especially given the sort of promulgation of sword and sorcery movies through the 80s. Like this is the same decade that gave us The Neverending Story, that gave us that gave us a bunch of low budget shit, both the Conan movies, which are pretty weird, like
right. But that's the thing is like immediately after I watched this movie, I watched some of Dragon Slayer, which was obviously made for like $1.98 and like by people who were just looking for something to fill. And to me, this, I mean, to a lesser extent with Excalibur, because I actually like Conan better, but to me, this and the Milius Conan film are the only real pre-Lord of the Rings fantasy films that work, because they're not Dragonheart, they're not like fodder. They're films made by serious artists who were like taking these very strange stories at face value, like seriously. And, make something.
Maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but I think The Neverending Story is fantastic. The first one, the second one is garbage, but the first one is really good. I still like that movie.
Yeah. To me that's still slightly different though. That's like portal fantasy or whatever you want to call it, rather than quote unquote high fantasy. Or at this point it's just nerd splitting hairs. But I don't know. I just think that this movie's got a very unique tone to it that that makes it up. But I don't know. Do we want to go back to the beginning? Are we gonna try and attempt to do
it's the Arthur legend. You know the Arthur legend? It's the Arthur legend.
I think what would help me, as a person who wasn't super familiar with the Arthur legend and had trouble following the plot, there seems to be like 4 chunks to this movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what are those what's the 1 to 2 sentence synopses of those chunks?
Okay, well, I think it's fair to. Okay, we can go and start. So it starts with Arthur's father, played by young Gabriel Byrne, and then I don't. Yeah, who I think is very good in the film.
Yeah, although he's where I first immediately noticed that like half the dialogue in this movie is ADR, and it's really obvious.
Oh, I thought it was the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe.
That's used to be how some movies do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you got hold on, I want to make sure that I'm anyway, but you have
Uther,
Gabriel Byrne as Uther, who is being Merlin to take the land, but is obviously revealing himself to be a short-sighted, petty rapist, strongman, which is not what Merlin is going for. So Merlin essentially abandons Uther after he fathers Arthur, and then goes, well, I'm going to try again with this kid.
Right. And I'm going to give this kid, although in a moment that's not fleshed out at all, he gives Arthur to someone he believes to be a good person that will raise him to be just and even-handed. But, like, we don't get any of that. We just get, like, oh, hey, Dad, I'm not really your dad. Now you're the king. I should tell you I'm not your dad. Like,
before we go back, before we go on though, I just want to give a shout out to Nicole Williamson, perhaps best known to to our listeners as Father Morningstar from the Exorcist 3 reshoots. So, you know, and I don't know, like, okay, so I feel like another, so if Acid with Your Dad is my first kind of capsule review of this movie, my second capsule review from this film is, you know, the Monty Python and the Holy Grail line. What an eccentric performance! Because everyone is, like, tuned up to, like, 17 in this movie, and it's the exact right place to play this on, and it's great because, like, this guy's Merlin is not like the grandfatherly sword in the stone, like, person that you remember.
He's
from
not the
Disney
Disney.
movies.
Yeah,
Like,
he's not the Disney.
yeah, he is a weird, bald-headed pagan who is just, like, runs in and screams shit about, like, the totality of reality breaking your mind, and then, like, he leaves and then comes back, like, periodically, and I just I find Nicole Williamson's performance the first of many eccentric ass performances in this film that I kind of cherish. So
I think that makes it. It was weird to me, like, reading about this as I was watching the movie and before it, that a handful of actors got their start in this movie. Like, it's weird to get your start as an actor and, like, this is kind of your first impression. Everything was, like, way turned up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not really maybe an encapsulation of, like, what people would like to do for the rest of their career.
Yeah. Baby Liam Neeson is that we'll get to Baby Liam Neeson later, but
Baby Liam Neeson. Well, and then so the next scene of note is Baby Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart always looked old though, is the thing, because I
Yes,
think he
it's
went
true.
totally bald when he was like 23, and so he's you know.
So you have the scene of Squire Arthur, and it's kind of hilarious because he's like, oh, it's not so much that he plays like, so the actor plays the Squire version of Arthur as basically dumb. I think he's like trying to play him as young, but he basically plays him like a slack-jawed yokel. So it's kind of hilarious that as soon as he pulls the sword from the stone, like, he immediately gains 30 IQ points. And I don't know if that's like just something that Excalibur conveys on you or what.
Uncoordinated and
Yeah.
gawky though, even when he's
Yeah.
practicing with his sword.
He like cut somebody's arm off with it, and it's like he swung it like a child swings a foam rubber sword, and some dude's arm just like drops off. It's completely
they
insane.
reused that arm drop gore scene a couple of
Yeah,
times.
they do.
Gore shot. Borman just must have been real pleased with it.
Yeah.
But so Patrick Stewart wins this kind of jousting tourney, but is unable to pull the sword from the stone. Arthur does it more or less on accident and reveals himself as the king of the Britons, even though and all the other knights at this moment say that, well, I didn't vote for you, and he explains that you don't vote for your kings, and
Right.
yeah.
And then it turns into a courtroom drama where they just try to figure out who the real king is for the next 3 hours. It's really weird.
No, but no. So as a result of Patrick Stewart, like, and once again, we're kind of making the plot at this point sound more level than it is. But essentially, Patrick Stewart's the only knight who stands by Arthur. Then all the other knights turn on Patrick Stewart. So Arthur and, like, the 5 dudes that Merlin has convinced to follow him go to, like, save Patrick Stewart's castle. And so this is the only place where I'm really going to argue with you, is I think the action scene here is pretty good.
This one's pretty good.
Like, the stunt
This
work
one's
is
pretty
good,
decent.
the choreography
Yeah.
is good, and then it also has what's probably my favorite. Like, I think encapsulate, like, everything that's good about this movie is kind of in that scene where it's kind of this brutal, weird, scuzzy, but also very mystical look at, like, the medieval era. And then I think it's, we talk about, like, the kind of performances and everything being, like, very strange and camp and whatnot, but I think the scene where Arthur turns over his blade to his enemy, because he basically defeats, like, the sieging forces, and says, and gives the leader of them a chance to join him, and the leader says, I'm not going to swear fealty to you because you're not a knight. And he goes, well, you know, you got me there. So he basically hands over the sword to his enemy who's just trying to kill him, and says, you know, and then join him. And, like, it's just, I don't know, I just really kind of love the way it's played, where he, you know, the guy gets up and, like, he's prepared to kill him, and then just feels the overwhelming hand of destiny, and you kind of see this internal struggle that he plays kind of beautifully, and then gives in and knights Arthur, and then swears fealty, thus putting him on his path. And it's like, to me, what this when this movie's at its worst, it's really appealingly strange, and when it's at its best, it's genuinely mythic. And I just find that the bee's knees.
I agree with you on the best, but at its worst, I think it's just dull. Like, I guess I don't feel like it's that. I feel like you feel like this movie is weirder than I feel like it is. I feel like coming out of the 70s, like the cinema that was coming out of the 70s, this movie does not feel that strange to me. And it feels more incoherent. The thing that's weird about this movie is it manages to cut a ridiculous pace and still somehow be kind of dull. And I don't know how they manage that. But, like, I cannot deny, like, I usually get on the pacing. Kurt used to, when we did this the first time around years ago, Kurt would always talk about me getting on my pacing hobby horse about, like, well, the pacing was bad, so, like, I didn't like the movie because it wasn't paced well. This movie is somehow paced really well. It cuts a breakneck, like, it doesn't stop almost ever. And I still was just, like, by the end, I was like, can we please just get to the fight between Arthur and Mordred and be done with this? Like, please make it stop. You know, and so it's like, I guess I just felt like I said earlier, like if it was cut into two movies, there could be a little bit more development. But like okay, we go basically from this scene, which is a good. I mean, I enjoyed this scene. I thought I actually remember noticing like Borman is making like 15 dudes on screen, real actors and stuntmen, look like a legit army that passes muster to me better than like full CGI army in, you know, like the later Hobbit movies or Lord of the Rings, because of the way it's shot and the way it's put together. That being said, we go from here almost directly to Arthur being an asshole to Lancelot, and it's such a change in gears from like the benevolent, I'm going to hand my sword to my enemy and let him knight me and put myself at risk because that's the kind of dude I am, to like, hey fuckface, you're on the king's road, so I'm going to fucking murder you.
You know, I mean, you're not wrong, but once again, I think that this is like the movie staying true to that medieval psychology. Because you're right in like the character arc, like that's not neat work, but like these motherfuckers were erratic. You know, there's no other way to put it. And yeah, I don't think the Lancelot material is particularly strong, and in fact I think
it's better than First Night, though. I will say that it's better than First Night.
Let me put it to you this way. I will agree with you a little bit, and I just and once again, like I will just say that it took me, like, I don't fundamentally disagree with anything you guys are saying. My score for this on Letterboxd is still 3.5 stars. I like it more than that would, you know, then I like it more than 3.5 stars would suggest, but I don't necessarily think it's a more successful movie than 3.5 stars. But so I really like the strange opening, and I really love the apocalyptic ending, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I don't disagree that the bridging gap between those two of Arthur actually, you know, ruling the semi utopian round table is probably the weakest stuff in the film.
And it feels like the longest.
I think I'll say here, I don't necessarily know that I completely agree with Joe in terms of like how I feel about the pacing of the movie. I definitely feel like it's extremely confusing. I found it hard to follow. Kind of maybe halfway through the movie, I started approaching it in a different way where I kind of like I sort of partway tuned out, which of course made it hard for me to understand what was going on because the movie is paced so fast and like you miss 2 lines of dialogue and you've like there's like 10 years have passed or
20 in some moments.
Right. But what I did find watching it that way is that like trying to stay tuned into it, it's like is moving through so much story so fast, and it was kind of exhausting and draining. And when I stopped paying as close attention, I found that whenever I looked back at it, I didn't quite know what was going on, but there was just crazy shit happening. And it was like really interesting for 2 minutes, and then I would tune out for 30 seconds and then come back, and it's like it's a completely different movie, obviously with the same director and director of photography, like with just crazy lights, crazy makeup and hair, and
there are like 7 or 8 movies within Excalibur for sure. But So I guess to me, if I was to pick out a flaw with this section of the movie, is you don't really get a sense of what King Arthur is doing outside of Camelot. Like to me, like once again, we'll save this for later, but like I think the scenes where the knights are riding out and like you see like what's kind of become of England in this time, and it's this very apocalyptic look is really really visually interesting and narratively interesting. But I don't know if you get the opposite sense of that, of like the land getting better under Arthur. Like there's like a few like money
No.
shots
Yeah.
of the round table.
I mean,
But like
you do at the very end after he drinks from but the first time around, you definitely
yeah,
don't get
the
that
first
vibe
time
at
around,
all.
yeah, like in the immortal words of Monty Python, he doesn't have shit all over him, and that's about like as clear of a sense of things improving as you get. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's the material with Lancelot coming into the fold and the Guinevere stuff, and there's the
It's
material with
so rushed. It's so rushed. And like the
and
fact
the material with Sir Percival and whatnot.
right. So the thing with Lancelot and the way it's handled in this movie. So I did say that this is better than First Night, which is a movie I watched once when it was new and I hated it, and I'll never watch it again because I remember it being just absolutely the most boring drudgery for what was ostensibly
he does not know kung fu in this film.
yeah, right. So but it's like he comes there and like Arthur and Guinevere's courtship is about 3 seconds long, and then she's just ready to like jump in the sack with Lancelot immediately. And Lancelot, the problem with so many of the characters in this movie is that they're all just like they're so horny that they're like, and they have like monologues about like I'm horny to the point of jeopardizing the wellness of the kingdom and my fellow man. That's how horny I am, and I'm just like, really? That's what we're doing? That's how horny we are? And like Lancelot is like, yeah, Arthur's my best friend and you're the queen and like it could fuck up the whole kingdom and like ruin all of England, but like I gotta break off a piece of that. And like that's the extent of their courtship, and she's like, okay, let's fucking do it. And it's just like and I get it, because I know, Bryce, I already know what you're going to say, which is you're going to go back to the, like, yeah, man, Dark Ages literature, like, they didn't structure stories the same way we are, and that's why I find it charming. Well, might I suggest that maybe Dark Ages literature, from a time when not a lot of good stories were being written, when not a lot of stories were being written, period, not a lot of good ones were being written at all, that maybe that's not always the best time to adapt, like, literature from into a modern film. And again, part of it is I watched Mandy last night, and Mandy spends a lot of time making the relationship between Red and Mandy very clear, so that and their care and their tenderness and their love towards each other, that when cult leader does bad things, you're with Red, that like, nope, they all gotta die. They all gotta die. Because, like, this was the most important person in the world to you, and probably your anchor with reality. And now, like, she's gone, and so now they gotta be gone. And that's just the fucking way it is. And, like, I didn't, this movie did not get there.
This movie could have used more Bill Duke, I will acknowledge that. But
Absolutely.
I will point out before we leave this behind that quotes from Kingsley Amos's Lucky Jim. Those who profess themselves unable to believe in the reality of human progress ought to cheer themselves up, as the students under examination had conceivably been cheered up by a short study of the Middle Ages. The hydrogen bomb, the South African government, Chiang Kai-shek, Senator McCarthy himself, would then seem like light price to pay for no longer being in the Middle Ages. Had people ever been as nasty, as self-indulgent, as dull, as miserable, as cocksure, as bad at art, as dismally ludicrous, as wrong as they had ever been in the Middle Ages? So, once again, this is a movie that does not try and get away from that reality, and that's what I enjoy about it. I will not argue at all that this period is the weaker stuff in the film. Same with like this quest of Sir Percival and eventually baby Liam Neeson challenging the thing. It doesn't help that they maybe got the least charismatic actor in the film as Lancelot. He's no Richard Gere, that one.
No, but, that's true. That's true.
But what I will say is what I will say is, in the midst of these doldrums, you have a war of the wills between Peter Williamson and Baby Goth Helen Mirren. And if you're not being entertained during those scenes, something is the matter with you.
Well,
So,
as I said, Goth Helen Mirren is like 1000% the best part of this movie.
yeah.
Both in terms of her like absolute scenery chewing performance and her stuff opposite Merlin, and also she is just a stone fox in that fishnet top. So like, that's just,
So even in the doldrums, you still have plenty of entertaining material in this film. So, and you also have Liam Neeson with like the full beard and a man bun and chrome armor. So I don't know, like, how you're not how there are bright spots.
Yeah, I mean, he should have throat chopped Lancelot. That's all I'm saying.
Liam Neeson's face is so distinctive that I read that he was in this movie, that he like got one of his big breaks, early big breaks in this movie. So like for the first hour of the movie, I was trying to study people's face to figure out if this was like really young Liam Neeson. And then when he actually showed up, I was like, whoa.
He's dancing. He's like in the background dancing when Guinevere first, like when they first unite the kingdoms. When Arthur does that, and they're like dancing and drinking and stuff with Patrick Stewart's castle. He's in the background dancing in that scene, and you could see. I saw him immediately. I was like, that is baby Liam Neeson right there, because he has such a distinctive face.
Yeah. He always he was never not craggy. He always to a certain extent looked like he was 43. And now he's like 65, and
he turned 68 yesterday, as a matter of fact.
And he still looks 43. So,
Yep, it's true. It's true.
Good on you,
So, yeah, I mean, I think all the most interesting stuff aesthetically, not just like that Helen Mirren is very attractive in this film, but aesthetically around the magic users, to use a D&D term, all that stuff, and the crystal cave where Merlin like does his magic shit. That's all I think some of the most interesting aesthetic stuff that's happening in this movie. Some of the light. I mean,
once again, I like how aggressively pagan this film is. Like the spin it puts on everything. Like even up to the Holy Grail itself. Like it's got a very, unique, considered worldview when it's coming to this mythology, and I just find it interesting. So, once again, it ain't the sword and stone.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't the sword and the stone. But I don't know that I necessarily picked up on like. I mean, I'm not a student of paganism, but I didn't pick up like the, this movie is aggressively pagan in some specific way. I didn't pick up on that vibe at all. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's sort of broken up into these 4 distinct parts, and I guess the part we're talking about now is kind of the Lancelot betrayal, which
So Lancelot and baby Liam Neeson duel. Lancelot sleeps with Guinevere. Anyway, Helen Mirren. Well, I like that. Like even Merlin is essentially a character who can't control magic. Like he's able to channel it and sometimes make it do what he wants to, but it's like this force out there that's greater than any one human being. And essentially Helen Mirren's able to dupe him, and then father trap him in a stasis and father a child with her half brother Arthur, and then things really go to shit. So
yes.
After
incest baby.
Movie is in terms of his ability he can channel magic, but he can't completely control it. He expresses that he had to rest for 9 months, 9 moons after he used the magic to make what's her face, one of Bone.
Gabriel Byrne, yeah.
And so like not only like from the perspective of like the mortals in this movie, horniness is like the most possible form. Magic users, harnessing horniness is like the most exhausting thing that you could possibly do with magic.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
Horniness is the driving force in this movie from the beginning. It should be noted.
Yeah. I mean, as in many stories, to be fair. But yeah, so she disguises, so using the same spell basically that Uther used to bone her mom, she uses it to bone Arthur, which begets Mordred, who will of course be the undoing of his father.
And once again, we talk about the weird pacing of this movie, but like, this is what I like about it, is because like there's no gradual downfall. It's like this happens and instantly everything goes to shit. And in
Everything
fact,
sucks right away.
like right away, and it turns around, and what would you know? Everyone does have shit all over them. So
It would be like jumping from like 2014 to 2020 in the blink of an eye.
God,
That's what it's like.
That's exactly what it's like. Um, so yeah, so like immediately, like everything's gray, everyone's starving to death. Arthur is suddenly like an old broken man who can't like stand up, and he sends his knights out for the Grail. And once again, like I said, this movie just like fails, like or not fails, it just refuses to give any like modern leeway to these storytellings at all, because like it's not like, you know, a modern script doctor on this would be like, yeah, question for 10 years? No way, make it 6 months, you know? But no, instead these people, like, futilely spend, like, you know, decades of their lives searching for this artifact that may or may not exist while everyone starves in the background. And like, to be fair, I think the film really does bring this weight of, like, there's that scene, like, where Percival's talking, he's like, talking about, like, starving and freezing to death and, like, never thinking he would hear laughter again. And, like, personally, I
See,
yeah,
I didn't get there for me. That felt like it was telling and not showing. I mean, it shows like the skeletal knight freezing to death, and it shows and then when he finds Lancelot as like a crazy old street corner
like a
preacher,
crazy priest,
yeah,
crazy old street corner priest with a sword. I don't know. To me, the feeling of exhaustion in these scenes is palatable. Like to me, this is where Boorman's really bringing in his skills as a director, because the land, like the color palette, like suddenly goes away. Like the land itself feels exhausted. All the characters feel exhausted. Like everything's just.
I felt exhausted.
Weirder. Yes, the viewer does feel exhausted, and it works for me anyway.
Honestly, it didn't get there for me. It just felt like, oh, things are bad. And it's been, I guess, 10 years and then maybe another 10 because Mordred goes from being a baby to being 20, or basically.
But that, like, I don't know, like, to me, this movie does have, like, a genuine metaphysical edge to it. And, like, throwing around, like, a big term, but, like, it's, in a lot of ways, it feels like maybe the closest thing that the studio system ever got to a Jodorowsky film, where, like, the characters' spiritual sides, like, do affect, like, the physical reality that they're inhabiting, and the physical reality like feeds back on them in the loop. Like it's like that's like the vibe. There are streaks of this film that have an El Topo vibe to me.
It feels very generous of you to compare this to the films of Jodorowsky, I think.
I stand by this statement as far as it goes.
Yeah, this part was the worst. Honestly, this and the Lancelot stuff, and that they're basically abutted next to each other, just drag, like, it. The beginning is fine and the end is good, but like the whole two big sections in the middle of the Lancelot junk and Percival's quest, I was just like, my God, this is agonizing.
That's the difference, is that I don't draw a big distinction from the ending and the Percival quest. To me, they very much have like the same grammar of their language, and like the imagery is all very strange and aggressive. Like, you know, at one point they come to a tree that's just like literally covered in bodies.
Yeah.
You know, and like
that bird pecks that dude's eye out, and that's pretty dope.
Yeah. Nose off, then eye. Yeah. You have like Liam Neeson's like naked in a tunic strapped to a horse. You know, the whole costume design of like Mordred's costume, like it goes from like this vaguely cheery, kind of as close to state as the film gets in that in near that halfway mark, to just like aggressively dark and strange and grisly imagery, and like I just think it's extremely effective. And to me, and I love that the way that they portray his visions of the Holy Grail are all like just scary as shit. Like he suddenly comes up to like a 3-foot cup that starts shouting at him in the voice of like a loud, angry British man, and he like just flees in terror from it.
Right.
Is his first instinct.
Yeah, I mean,
that moment where it's like cutting between like his like dying conscience as he's like hanging from a tree, like to this weird mystical vision he's having. Like this is some once again, some Jodorowsky-esque shit. Like, it's some very strange and aggressively strange imagery.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't feel like it's that weird by the standards of the late 70s, sort of into the early 80s.
Yeah, I guess, but this is like, yeah, I think of this more of an 80s film than a 70s film. So it's like, yeah, by the standards of the most adventurous period in American movie making history, maybe it's not much. By whatever else was out in the multiplex when this was, in theaters, it's fucking odd. It's 81.
I mean, this is 81, so we're only 2 years removed from, the said most adventurous decade.
2 years.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I mean, so we get through all this stuff, and I do like I like the imagery of the giant talking cup. I just don't think it's quite as offbeat as you do. I like that part of it, and I appreciated that it did feel as long as it did, because the point is that Percival's been out and looking for this cup for 20 years, but and then when he gets it, and then it's like Arthur drinks from the Grail, and like Henry Jones Sr., he's like back up and at him, right away, and he's ready to go fight his bastard incest baby, and that stuff is pretty good. Like the dream ghost of Merlin tricking Morgana into creating a fog of war that will not favor her son is pretty good. And the battle there is like pretty decent, especially since those knights, the black knights that are Mordred's dudes, they're pretty cool. They reminded me of like the biker gang in Mandy, or like the evil Daft Punk with the lynching gun from Hobo with a Shotgun.
I mean, I think the costume design and the production design on this whole movie is pretty neat. Like, it's definitely a film where you can tell a lot of creativity and time went into the pre-production as much as anything else.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that you would single that out, though, because I won't lie that I think like that opening battle with Mordred, with Mordred's forces, is one of the weaker action scenes in the film. And like, you're talking about how Boorman kind of creates the illusion of like armies clashing with 20 guys in that early scene. That one really does feel like 10 suits of armor in the fog to me, like in a fog machine. Like I don't. Well, like, but at that moment you're ready for like it to like go out and be crazy epic, and it doesn't. But I will say I really like the effect where as the battle ends and that fog clears, and so like talking about Mandy, like that's your Mandy moment when they're like impaled each other and the fog clears.
Yeah, and the sunset and everything.
Like on piles of bodies, like hundreds of people dead underneath them. They've got the blood red sun in the background, and it's like once again a very Mandy, very heavy metal moment. And, but the other thing that itself isn't great, but it's got a capper to it.
Well, but the moment right before that when they stab each other, I'm wanting something. I'm wanting Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris in the Coliseum, to reference a film that's closer to of this time, just so it doesn't sound like my expectations are way outsized by referencing a recent movie. I'm not expecting Captain America fighting Thanos with Thor's hammer or anything like that, but I'm wanting a fight between these two, and like literally Arthur lets himself get stabbed immediately and then just walks down the spear to get close enough to Mordred to stab him with Excalibur, and like that's it, that's the fight, that's the whole fight. And I wanted more.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I guess be like that image at the end is very great, but like you would definitely want that epicness in that final battle. I don't know if it quite gets there, but still mighty strange. So I'm still enjoying myself, even if it's even if it's not quite the action scene that you wanted. So
yeah. Well, also speaking of the where time could be cut, you can talk about faithfulness to the source material or whatever, but like literally, what is the point of having Percival go off to throw the sword back to the lady in the lake, deciding he's not going to do it, go back to talk to Arthur. Arthur talks to him again and says, no, dude, for real, you have to. And then he goes back to the lake and then actually does throw the sword in. Like, why? Why?
I think it's so the ladies of Avalon can snatch Arthur without Percival stopping them.
Why couldn't they have done that when he was gone the first time?
I get your objection, but that's also like a 2 minute and 30-second scene. So.
But it's just another example of where they could have of places where they could have cut time or like, I mean, again, I just feel like this, if it would have been 2 movies, I think I probably would have liked it more, honestly.
One thing that I will say that we kind of skipped over, but I will say that I think the final scene between Arthur and Guinevere is actually nice, and it's probably the best chemistry that they have in the movie.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to disagree that that's a weak point, like, you know, in this film, but it's kind of funny that they should not have necessarily saved the best for last there. If we had been more invested in that relationship earlier on, then great, but instead you have this really nice scene after everything has already played out.
I mean, they have like no screen time together. They're on screen together for like 5 minutes before that. You know, it's.
I think she has more screen time with Patrick Stewart than she does with.
With Arthur.
They don't have much screen time together, and if you're not paying really Hawkeye close attention to this movie, it's very easy to miss that they're the same person because they didn't recast Arthur and they did recast her. I think she's played by 3 people or something, right? Is that right?
Not sure.
I couldn't tell you for sure.
I'm not sure if she's played by
we'll neither confirm
3. Yeah, maybe 2, but I don't know about 3. But
yeah, well, in the end, definitely, like when he's got a little bit of like the kind of like white brushed in his beard.
Yeah,
and she's a completely different person. She looks like she's 20 years older than him.
Well, he just drank from the Holy Grail, man. All right, so
yeah,
you know.
That's true.
It doesn't. The Holy Grail doesn't include a thing of just for men for the beard, but it just makes him a little more But yeah, but I'm not sure that they recast her. Honestly, thinking about it, I think they just covered her with the nun's habit.
I've never noticed it. Yeah,
really? No?
Yeah.
I mean, I would believe it if you looked it up, but I actually am not sure that they recast her. But yeah, I mean, I think that if they did recast her, maybe it's just that he had better chemistry with the other actress because like Bryce said, I feel that was the moment where I felt the most genuine emotion in that relationship was when he's like, I didn't think you would keep the sword and I still love you. And thanks for having my back, even though you rode my best friend for all he was worth. And, that's, but
Morgana is played by 3 people. Guinevere is only played by 1.
Yeah.
I guess it was really good making.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there you go.
Morgana's played by a little girl and then Helen Mirren. And then when Merlin tricks her into using up her magic, then she's played by another woman.
So in summation, my favorite version of the Arthurian legend is Knight Riders by George Romero, starring Ed Harris and Tom Savini.
I was actually going to say we should have watched that movie instead.
I will do an action cast. Well, I mean, obviously we're going to have to give it some space, so it's not the Arthurian cast. But I legit think that's probably, aside from Dawn, is my favorite Romero film, and I love to talk about it because it's such a weird autobiographical film that at the same time does manage to be like a great version of the Arthurian legend. But anyway, so this movie is not Knight Riders because Lord knows what can be, but it is a gentleman's second, and I'm happy to have this very strange film to watch and ponder at sometimes. So,
what did you think was your favorite moment of horniness from the movie?
My favorite moment of horniness, I think, is the idea that Gabriel Byrne's character, King Uther, is so horny that not only does he like destroy the unity of the realm, but he can get his horse to ride on mist, and that and that's explicitly stated by Merlin. That's why the horse can ride on mist, because he's that fucking horny.
Lust will take you there. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's some real horniness. So, yeah, it's hard to beat that.
My favorite moment of horniness is immediately after that, where Gabriel Byrne is. I guess we are to imagine that Gabriel Byrne's penis kind of protrudes from his navel. The way that he's It just
Well,
it's a really interesting choice. Yeah.
I think it was just a generally interesting choice to have him take her to town in the armor. Like, he didn't... Like, I cannot imagine how uncomfortable it would be to have sex in full plate armor.
Plate armor. Yeah. See, this movie does make you think. So, yeah. So, all right, so Joe more or less is negative on this movie.
I gave this 2.5 stars on Letterboxd, which for me, like 3 stars is I liked it more than I didn't. 3.5 stars is I liked it enough that I might watch it again someday. Anything above that is like great to perfect. And then like 2.5 is like there were interesting things about it, but I just don't ever see myself going back to this, and I didn't really enjoy it. But there's stuff about it that I did like.
Yeah. Ethan, I'm just curious if you would consider yourself more broadly positive or negative on the film.
I guess here's what I would say. I do not want to watch this movie again, but so I'm 37 years old. I don't go to parties anymore, and also we don't live in a world where anyone can have a party ever again. So,
right.
But if I was a younger man and we lived in a world where you could have parties, this would be a great movie to project on the wall at a party. Because anytime you look at it, there's some crazy...
Something's happening.
Something's going on. Yeah, that's fair.
And for that, I like it. I think it's a courageous movie. I don't want to watch it again.
That's very legitimate. I think just to contextualize how I feel about this movie, the last movie that I believe, and I'm double checking myself, but I believe the last movie that I gave a 2.5 star rating to on oh no, that's not right. The last feature that I gave 2.5 stars to was Spookies. Which is a movie that has a lot of stuff. I'm more likely to watch Spookies again, partially because I made the investment to buy the Blu-ray. So I feel obligated to maybe get at least one more watch out of it, because Spookies is this complete and utter train wreck that is just fascinating to watch. And it's got these really amazing effects shots in the movie, that the half of the movie that was the movie before the half of the movie that was a different movie got grafted onto it after the fact. That movie actually had a lot of potential to be something very interesting, and the fact that it didn't is kind of a tragedy, but that's the kind of film that I'm viewing Excalibur as. Like, there's some really interesting, fun stuff in there, but overall it's kind of a slog, and I don't really want to watch it again.
Let me just say that if we're talking about like just pure dollars for value, I got my copy for $2 from Half Price Books. And oh man, I have gotten my $2 worth. And to our action listeners out there, if you go on Prime and it's available to rent for $1.99, I will guarantee you that you will have $2 worth of entertainment out of this movie too.
That's probably true. It was streaming on some channel. I just did like a on-demand search on my cable box, and it's on one of the channels I get, so I got to watch it for free, so can't complain about that. Do either of you have any other final thoughts on our Excalibur before we sort of take it home for this month?
Once again, watch Knight Riders if you can. If you can't watch Excalibur, don't watch the Guy Ritchie version.
No, do not watch the Guy Ritchie version.
Watch the Antoine Fuqua version before you watch the Guy Ritchie version. And other than that, I'll just say, please explain to me why you're all watching Time Cop. I really want to know.
Not watching Time Cop, watching us talk about Time Cop.
Please, I am baffled, but in a very interested way. So.
Did it do better than any of our first incarnation episodes? I guess
I don't have those stats anymore, but those episodes generally got between like 100 and 200 downloads, and Time Cop currently has more views than that. So yes,
definitely a different era of media consumption too.
Also true.
Yeah.
So next time, I think I kind of fucked up because it's Pride Month, and I feel like we should have maybe tried to find a movie that would have fit that theme, but since we do these the first Monday of every month, maybe for July we'll do something that would fit the Pride Month theme. I'm having trouble thinking of a good action movie that does, because there are a lot of queer horror movies out there, not a ton of queer action movies. So
we could do something from the Wachowskis.
We could. We could do The Matrix. I haven't watched The Matrix in a really long time, and I've kind of been meaning to revisit it. Yeah. And that is a lot of people are now acknowledging that it feels like a metaphor for gender transition. And I think that it would be that. Yeah, we should do The Matrix next time for a belated Pride Month celebration. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's going to be it for us. I'm Joe Drilling. With me this month was Bryce Wilson and Ethan Chang, and for them, I say so long to you, and we'll be back next month. Every first,
Ethan, you're killing me with that.
the second Monday of every month at 9 p.m. right here on this YouTube channel. We do this live, so we will see you next month. Same action time, same action channel. Adios, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Well, thank you guys for suffering through Excalibur. Sorry you didn't like it a bit more.